The night was calm, the kind of quiet that made small towns like Ridgewood feel almost magical. Officer Daniel Carter sat in his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos while scanning the empty roads ahead. It wasn't often that anything exciting happened here. Most nights were filled with broken taillights and teenagers sneaking out after curfew. But Daniel had learned over the years that even the quietest places could hide surprises. As he drove down Maple Ridge Road, a long stretch of asphalt flanked by dense woods, his radar suddenly beeped. A sleek black sedan zoomed past him at an alarming speed, swerving slightly as if the driver was distracted, or maybe reckless. Daniel sighed, setting his thermos aside. Another speeding ticket to write. He flicked on his flashing lights and signaled for the car to pull over. The sedan eventually slowed and came to a stop on the shoulder of the road. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and notebook, stepping out into the cool night air. The driver's window rolled down slowly, revealing a woman behind the wheel. She couldn't have been older than 30, with sharp features and piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her hair was tied back neatly, but there was something about her that felt different. Not dangerous, necessarily, but not ordinary either. "Good evening, ma'am," Daniel said politely, shining his flashlight into the car. "Do you know how fast you were going?" She glanced up at him, unbothered by the question. "Not sure," she replied smoothly, her voice calm and measured. "Maybe a little too fast." Daniel nodded, jotting down her response. He asked for her license and registration, which she handed over without hesitation. As he examined the documents under the beam of his flashlight, he noticed how steady her hands were. Most people fumbled when they got pulled over, nervous or apologetic. But this woman, she seemed completely unfazed, as though being stopped by the police was no big deal. Her license identified her as Elena Cross, a name that didn't ring any bells. Still, something about her demeanor intrigued him. Maybe it was the way she held his gaze just a second longer than necessary, or the faint smirk playing on her lips. Whatever it was, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. He leaned closer to get a better look at her face, pretending to double-check her information. That's when he saw it, the edge of a tattoo peeking out from beneath the sleeve of her leather jacket. At first glance, it looked like nothing special, just a swirl of ink. But as his flashlight grazed her arm, the design became clearer. His breath caught in his throat. It was a serpent coiled tightly around a dagger, its tail curling into what appeared to be the number *7*. Daniel froze, his mind racing. He'd seen that symbol before, not on some random gang member, but on a case file buried deep in his memory. This wasn't just any tattoo. It belonged to someone far more dangerous than a simple speeder. For a moment, Daniel forgot where he was. All he could hear was the distant hum of crickets and the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Who was this woman? And why did she carry the mark of a ghost from his past? Officer Daniel Carter stood frozen, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand as the beam illuminated the tattoo on Elena's arm. The serpent coiled around the dagger was unmistakable, its details hauntingly familiar. It wasn't just a random design or some trendy ink. It was deliberate, precise, and loaded with meaning. And that number *7* at the end of the serpent's tail, that sealed it. This wasn't coincidence. Daniel's mind raced back to a time he had tried so hard to forget. Years ago, when he was still a rookie cop full of optimism and determination, he'd been assigned to a task force investigating a criminal organization known only by their emblem, the serpent and dagger. They called themselves the Serpent's Fang, though most people referred to them simply as the Syndicate. Their leader, an elusive figure known only as Viper, had orchestrated a string of violent crimes, robberies, kidnappings, arson, that left the region gripped in fear. No one ever saw Viper's face. No one knew who they truly were, but everyone recognized the symbol. That symbol now stared back at Daniel from Elena's arm, mocking him. For years, he'd convinced himself that the syndicate was gone, dismantled after a massive police operation. The last major raid had ended in chaos, leaving several officers dead, including two of Daniel's closest friends, and forcing him to retreat into a life of quieter patrols and simpler cases. He thought he'd escaped the nightmare, but here it was again, etched into the skin of a woman sitting inches away from him. Alina watched him silently, her green eyes gleaming under the faint glow of the dashboard light. She didn't say a word, but there was something unsettling about the way she studied him. Her calm demeanor hadn't wavered since he'd pulled her over, but now it felt calculated, almost predatory. Was she testing him? Did she know what this tattoo meant to him? Daniel cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. "Nice tattoo," he said casually, hoping to mask his rising unease. "Any story behind it?" Alina tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Oh, it has a story," she replied smoothly. "But I doubt you'd believe me if I told you." Her words sent a chill down Daniel's spine. She wasn't just answering his question. She was playing with him, teasing him. There was confidence in her tone, a quiet assurance that made him feel like he was the one being interrogated instead of the other way around. What did she know? And why was she showing him this tattoo now? Daniel stepped back slightly, putting distance between them as he glanced toward his patrol car. His instincts screamed at him to call for backup immediately, but he hesitated. If Alina really was connected to the syndicate, making a wrong move could put him in serious danger. On the other hand, letting her go without answers felt unthinkable. He needed more information, something concrete to confirm his suspicions. As he wrestled with his thoughts, Alina reached up to adjust her jacket, revealing a bit more of the tattoo. The movement seemed casual, but Daniel couldn't help noticing how deliberate it felt. She wanted him to see it. She wanted him to remember. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on Daniel's chest. This wasn't just a routine traffic stop anymore. It was a puzzle, a trap, and possibly a warning all rolled into one. Whatever Alina Cross was hiding, it was bigger than either of them, and Daniel wasn't sure he was ready to uncover the truth. The sight of the tattoo sent Daniel spiraling back to a time he had buried deep within himself. A time when his life was defined by fear, loss, and questions that never found answers. It had been over a decade since the ambush, but the memories came rushing back as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. He could still hear the sound of gunfire echoing through the narrow alleyway, see the flashes of light cutting through the darkness, and feel the cold grip of terror as he realized they were surrounded. That night, Daniel had been part of a team assigned to raid a suspected hideout of the Serpent's Fang. Intelligence reports claimed it was where Viper operated from, a fortress of secrets hidden beneath an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. They had planned everything meticulously: entry points, escape routes, backup contingents, but nothing could have prepared them for what awaited inside. As soon as they breached the building, chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out from every direction, and shadows moved faster than anyone could track. Daniel remembered diving behind a stack of crates, his heart pounding as bullets whizzed past him. His radio crackled with panicked voices, shouts of pain, cries for help, but static soon drowned them out. One by one, his teammates fell, until only silence remained. Daniel had managed to crawl through a broken window, bloodied and shaken, but alive. Two of his closest friends weren't so lucky. Detective Laura Hayes, who always brought homemade cookies to the station, and Officer Mark Reynolds, whose laugh could light up even the darkest room. They were gone. Their faces haunted Daniel in his dreams, their voices whispering accusations he couldn't silence. Asterisk, why did you survive? Why didn't you save us? Asterisk. After that night, the task force disbanded. Officially, the syndicate was declared neutralized, its members scattered or dead. Unofficially, no one really knew what happened to Viper or the rest of the organization. Some believed they faded into obscurity. Others thought they regrouped under a new name. Either way, Daniel made a silent vow never to chase ghosts again. He transferred to Ridgewood, seeking solace in the monotony of small-town policing. For years, he succeeded in keeping those memories locked away. But now, standing beside Alina's car, those ghosts came roaring back. The tattoo on her arm wasn't just ink. It was a key unlocking a door he'd sworn never to open. How many times had he stared at that same emblem during late-night briefings, trying to piece together its meaning? How many sleepless nights had he spent wondering about the person behind it? And now, here it was, staring him in the face once more. What unnerved him most was the timing. Why now? Why here? Was this some cruel twist of fate, or was there a deeper purpose to this encounter? Daniel clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. He couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment. Not with someone like Alina sitting mere feet away. Whoever she was, whatever connection she had to the syndicate, she clearly wasn't afraid of him. In fact, she seemed to enjoy watching him unravel. As Daniel stood there, grappling with his thoughts, he noticed something else about Alina, the way she carried herself. She wasn't nervous or defensive like someone caught in a compromising situation. Instead, she exuded confidence, almost as if she held all the cards while he stumbled blindly in the dark. Her calmness was infuriating and terrifying. She knew something he didn't, and that knowledge gave her power over him. For the first time in years, Daniel felt truly vulnerable. This wasn't just about solving a case or catching a criminal. It was personal. The tattoo on Alina's arm wasn't just a symbol of the syndicate. It was a reminder of everything he'd lost, everything he'd tried to forget. And now, it threatened to drag him back into a world he thought he'd left behind forever. Daniel knew he couldn't stay frozen forever, but his mind was still reeling from the weight of the tattoo and the memories it stirred. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus on the present moment. Alina was sitting calmly in her car, watching him with those piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through him. Whatever game she was playing, Daniel needed to regain control of the situation before it spiraled further out of hand. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steadier now, though his heart still hammered in his chest. "Can you explain why you were driving so erratically? You were weaving across lanes back there." Alina smirked faintly, as if she found his question amusing. "Just distracted, officer," she replied coolly, her tone smooth and measured. "Long day. Didn't mean to cause any trouble." Her words were casual, almost dismissive, but there was something unsettling about the way she delivered them. It wasn't arrogance exactly. It was more like she knew something he didn't, and she was enjoying the fact that he was scrambling to figure it out. Her calm demeanor only heightened Daniel's unease. Most people would be nervous or apologetic during a traffic stop, especially when confronted by a police officer who clearly suspected something was off. But Alina, she acted like she had nothing to fear. Trying to mask his discomfort, Daniel leaned slightly closer to the car window, pretending to examine her license again. "And this tattoo of yours," he said casually, gesturing toward her arm. "That's quite the design. Any meaning behind it?" For a split second, Alina's expression shifted. Her lips curled into a knowing smile, and her eyes sparkled with mischief. "You recognize it, don't you?" she asked softly, leaning forward just enough to make Daniel instinctively take a step back. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, sending a shiver down his spine. "Tell me, Officer Carter, how many survived that night?" Or should I say, who? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. His pulse quickened, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. How did she know his name? How did she know about Asterisk that night? Asterisk. The ambush, the betrayal, the loss. It was all supposed to be buried in the past, locked away where no one could find it. Yet here she was, speaking as if she'd been there herself, as if she'd watched it all unfold. Daniel's mind raced. Was she bluffing? Testing him? Or did she really have information about what happened that night? If so, how much did she know? And why was she revealing it now? Every instinct screamed at him to tread carefully. This woman wasn't just some random speeder. She was dangerous, calculated, and far smarter than she let on. He glanced over his shoulder toward his patrol car, debating whether to call for backup immediately. But something stopped him. If Elena really was connected to the syndicate, and everything pointed to that being true, then alerting others might escalate things faster than he could handle. He needed to keep her talking, to buy himself time to think. "So you're saying this tattoo means something to me?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral despite the storm raging inside him. "Care to elaborate?" Elena chuckled softly, her smile widening into something almost predatory. "Oh, officer, you're sharper than you look. But trust me, you'll understand soon enough." She leaned back in her seat, crossing her arms as if she had all the time in the world. "The real question is, are you ready for the answers?" Daniel swallowed hard, his grip tightening on his flashlight. Whatever game she was playing, it was clear she held the upper hand. For now. But Daniel wasn't about to let her walk away without finding out more. The problem was, every word she spoke felt like another thread pulling him deeper into a web he wasn't sure he could escape. Daniel's mind raced as he tried to process Elena's cryptic words. Her calm confidence was maddening, and her ability to stay one step ahead of him only deepened his unease. She wasn't just taunting him, she was testing him, probing for weaknesses. Every word out of her mouth felt like a riddle wrapped in a thread, and Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that she was leading him towards something far bigger than a routine traffic stop. He glanced at his patrol car again, weighing his options. Calling for backup was still the safest choice, but something about Elena's demeanor suggested she wouldn't hesitate to disappear if he gave her even a moment's opening. The last thing he wanted was for her to slip away before he could get answers. Answers about the tattoo, about Viper, about Asterisk that night Asterisk. Whatever secret she carried, they were tied to a past he'd spent years trying to forget. And now it seemed she was forcing him to confront it head-on. "Let's cut to the chase," Daniel said firmly, stepping closer to the car window. His voice betrayed none of the turmoil brewing inside him. "Who are you really? And why do you have that tattoo?" Elena tilted her head slightly, her green eyes glinting with amusement. "You already know who I am," she replied smoothly. "Or at least, you know what I represent. That tattoo isn't just ink. It's a reminder. Of power. Of loyalty. Of consequences." Her words sent a chill down Daniel's spine. Loyalty to whom? Consequences for what? He opened his mouth to press further, but before he could speak, the distant sound of screeching tires shattered the tension-filled silence. Both Daniel and Elena turned their heads sharply toward the noise. Two sets of headlights appeared in the distance, barreling down the road at an alarming speed. For a split second, Daniel thought it might be backup arriving earlier than expected. But then he realized the cars weren't marked police vehicles. They were sleek, black sedans identical to Elena's, and they were heading straight for them. Panic surged through him as he instinctively reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. I need immediate assistance at Maple Ridge Road. Possible hostile situation." Before he could finish his transmission, Elena sprang into action. With lightning speed, she slammed her car into reverse, narrowly missing Daniel as she spun the vehicle around in a cloud of dust. The sudden movement caught him off guard, and by the time he recovered, she was already speeding away, leaving him standing in the middle of the road. The two approaching sedans swerved wildly to avoid hitting him, their drivers clearly intent on pursuing Elena. For a moment, Daniel stood frozen, torn between chasing after her and ensuring his own safety. Then, adrenaline kicked in. He sprinted back to his patrol car, slamming the door shut behind him as he started the engine. His heart pounded in his chest as he hit the gas, following the trail of brake lights and dust left in Elena's wake. As he sped after her, Daniel's mind raced with questions. Who were those other drivers? Were they working with Elena, or against her? And why had she run? If she truly had nothing to hide, she would have stayed and faced him. Instead, she had fled without hesitation, dragging him deeper into whatever web she was spinning. The chase led them off the main road and onto a narrow, winding path that cut through dense woods. Tree branches clawed at the sides of Daniel's car as he pushed it to its limits, desperate not to lose sight of Elena. Up ahead, he could see her sit and fishtailing dangerously as she navigated sharp turns. It was clear she knew these roads well, but so did he. Growing up in Ridgewood, he'd explored every back road and shortcut in the area. This was his territory, and he wasn't about to let her escape. But even as he closed the gap between them, doubt gnawed at him. Was this exactly what she wanted? Had she lured him here on purpose, knowing he wouldn't give up until he uncovered the truth? Whatever awaited him at the end of this chase, one thing was certain. Daniel's quiet life as a small-town cop was over. From this point forward, there would be no turning back. The narrow road twisted and turned through the dense woods, the darkness pressing in on all sides as Daniel pushed his patrol car to its limits. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his eyes locked onto the red taillights of Elena's sit-in just ahead. The chase had taken them far from the safety of the main highway, deep into an area where few people ever ventured. The trees loomed like silent spectators, their branches clawing at the sky, as if trying to snatch the speeding cars from the ground. Elena's driving was reckless but calculated, each sharp turn executed with precision that suggested she knew these roads intimately. She wasn't just running blindly, she was leading him somewhere. And yet, despite the danger of losing control on such treacherous terrain, Daniel refused to let her out of his sight. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to call for backup and wait for reinforcements, but he couldn't. Not now. Not when every second felt like it brought him closer to uncovering the truth. Suddenly, Elena's sedan skidded violently around a bend, kicking up a cloud of dirt and gravel before disappearing entirely. Daniel cursed under his breath, slamming on the brakes as he approached the same curve. When he rounded it, his headlights revealed the reason for her abrupt disappearance. A jagged gap in the road where an old bridge had once stood. Beyond it lay nothing but a steep drop into the forest below. But there was no sign of Elena's car. Confusion rippled through him as he stepped out of his vehicle, his flashlight cutting through the thick fog that clung to the air. How had she vanished so quickly? There was no other road, no side paths, no place to hide. Unless his gaze fell on a narrow dirt trail veering off into the woods, barely visible beneath the overgrown brush. It wasn't much, but it was enough to suggest she might have abandoned her car and fled on foot. Without hesitation, Daniel grabbed his flashlight and gun, following the faint tire tracks that led into the shadows. The deeper he went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The sounds of crickets and rustling leaves gave way to an eerie silence, broken only by the crunch of his boots on the uneven ground. The beam of his flashlight danced across gnarled tree trunks and tangled roots, illuminating glimpses of something ahead. A sprawling structure looming in the distance. An abandoned warehouse. Daniel slowed his pace, his senses on high alert. The building looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, its windows shattered and walls covered in ivy. Yet there was something ominous about the way it sat there, waiting. He could feel it in his gut. This wasn't just some random hiding spot. Elena had brought him here for a reason. As he approached cautiously, his flashlight caught movement near the entrance. A figure darted inside, vanishing into the darkness. "Elena," he called out, his voice echoing through the empty space. No response came, only the creak of metal and the groan of decaying wood as the wind swept through the ruins. Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped inside, his flashlight sweeping across the cavernous interior. Dust hung heavy in the air, and the floor was littered with debris, broken machinery, rusted tools, and scraps of fabric fluttering like ghosts in the breeze. Then suddenly he saw her. Elena stood at the far end of the warehouse, silhouetted against the pale moonlight streaming through a hole in the roof. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. "You've been chasing answers all your life, haven't you, Officer Carter?" she said softly, her voice carrying an almost hypnotic quality. "Well, tonight, you'll find them." Before Daniel could respond, the lights flickered, and then went out completely, plunging him into suffocating darkness. The darkness swallowed Daniel whole, pressing in on him like a living thing. His flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died completely, leaving him blind in the cavernous warehouse. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to stay calm, gripping his gun tightly as his other hand fumbled for the flashlight's power button. Nothing happened. It was dead, either drained of battery or damaged somehow. Either way, he was stranded in the pitch black with no way to see what lay ahead. "Elena," Daniel called out, his voice echoing eerily off the walls. There was no reply, only the faint creak of metal and the distant drip of water somewhere in the shadows. He strained his ears, trying to pick up any sound that might give away her location, or the presence of anyone else lurking in the darkness. But the silence was suffocating, broken only by the uneven rhythm of his own breathing. He took a cautious step forward, his boots crunching against the debris-strewn floor. The air smelled damp and musty, tinged with the metallic tang of rust. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to retreat into the safety of the open night outside. But he couldn't, not when Elena held the key to so many unanswered questions. Whatever she wanted to show him, whatever truths she promised to reveal, they were hidden here in this forsaken place, and Daniel knew he wouldn't be able to rest until he uncovered them. As his eyes slowly adjusted to the lack of light, shapes began to emerge from the gloom. Broken machinery, stacks of rotting crates, and jagged beams jutting out like skeletal fingers. The moonlight streaming through the hole in the roof provided just enough illumination to make out vague outlines, but it wasn't nearly enough to feel secure. Every shadow seemed to shift and twist, playing tricks on his mind. Was that movement a figure darting behind a pillar, or just his imagination running wild? Suddenly, a soft scraping noise came from behind him. Daniel spun around, raising his gun instinctively, but there was nothing there, only empty space and the oppressive weight of the darkness. His heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the area, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Enough games," he growled, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "Show yourself." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then a low chuckle echoed through the warehouse, sending chills down his spine. It wasn't menacing. It was almost playful, as if Elena found the entire situation amusing. "You always did have a knack for walking into danger, Officer Carter." Her voice floated toward him, impossible to pinpoint. "But are you ready to face what comes next?" Before Daniel could respond, something caught his eye, a faint glow near the far wall. At first, it was just a flicker, barely noticeable amidst the shadows. But as he watched, it grew brighter, revealing a series of red symbols painted crudely onto the concrete. They formed words and images, their meaning unclear but undeniably ominous. In the center of it all was the serpent and dagger emblem, the same one tattooed on Elena's arm. Beneath the emblem were coordinates scrawled in dripping red paint, *41-27-82-59. Daniel stared at them, his mind racing. What did they mean? Where did they lead? And why had Elena left them here for him to find? As he stepped closer to examine the markings, a loud crash reverberated through the warehouse, startling him. He whirled around, his gun raised, but there was still no sign of Elena or anyone else. The sound had come from deeper within the building, drawing his attention further into the labyrinth of shadows. "Elena," he shouted again, frustration edging his voice. Still no response, just the echo of his own words bouncing back at him, taunting him. Daniel hesitated for a moment, torn between staying put and following the trail she'd laid out. But deep down, he knew there was only one choice. This wasn't just about finding her anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. Taking a deep breath, he tightened his grip on his gun and moved deeper into the warehouse, each step carrying him closer to answers he wasn't sure he was ready for. The deeper Daniel ventured into the warehouse, the more the air seemed to thicken with tension. Each step echoed unnaturally loud, as if the building itself was alive and watching him. The red symbols on the wall glowed faintly in the dim light, their message clear yet cryptic. 41 Deg 2782 Deg 59. Coordinates. A destination. But where did they lead? And why had Elena gone through so much trouble to bring him here? His flashlight remained dead in his hand, useless against the oppressive darkness. He relied instead on the pale moonlight filtering through cracks in the ceiling, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls. Every movement felt deliberate now, his breathing steady but shallow, his footsteps slow and measured. Somewhere in this maze of rusted machinery and crumbling beams, Elena was waiting, watching. Elena. He called out again, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. No response came, only the faint groan of the old structure settling under its own weight. It was maddening, the way she toyed with him, pulling strings he couldn't see. She wanted him to follow, to chase the breadcrumbs she'd left behind. But to what end? Finally, he reached the source of the earlier crash, a pile of fallen metal beams blocking a doorway at the far end of the warehouse. Beyond it, a narrow staircase spiraled downward into even darker depths. Daniel hesitated, peering into the abyss below. Instinct told him not to go further. Logic screamed that this could be a trap. Yet something about those coordinates gnawed at him. They weren't random. They were a clue, a piece of the puzzle he'd been chasing all night. And maybe, just maybe, they would lead him to answers about Viper, the Syndicate, and the horrors of that fateful night years ago. Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped over the debris and descended the stairs, one cautious step at a time. The air grew colder with each level, carrying the faint scent of earth and decay. At the bottom, he found himself in a small underground chamber lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the center of the room stood a rickety wooden table, atop which lay an envelope marked simply with his name, Officer Daniel Carter. His pulse quickened as he approached the table, his gun still raised defensively. There was no sign of Elena or anyone else, just the envelope, waiting for him like a final test. Slowly, he picked it up and opened it, revealing a folded sheet of paper inside. Unfolding it revealed a handwritten note. Daniel, you've spent years running from your past, burying it beneath the quiet life of a small-town cop. But some ghosts refuse to stay buried. These coordinates will take you to the truth, not just about Viper, but about yourself. Are you brave enough to face it, or will you let fear keep you in the dark forever? Remember, the past always catches up. At the bottom of the page was a crude sketch of the serpent and dagger emblem, identical to the tattoo on Elena's arm. Daniel stared at it, his mind racing. What did she mean by the truth about yourself? Was this some twisted game designed to break him? Or was there really something hidden at those coordinates, something that could finally put his demons to rest? He glanced around the room one last time, half expecting Elena to emerge from the shadows and mock him further. But she was gone, leaving only her words and the map behind. Whatever awaited him at the coordinates, he knew one thing for certain. His quiet life in Ridgewood was over. From this moment forward, every choice he made would pull him deeper into a world he thought he'd escaped. Pocketing the note, Daniel turned and climbed back up the stairs, his resolve hardening with each step. Whether it was bravery or recklessness driving him, he didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't walk away, not until he uncovered the truth. Because sometimes facing your fears is the only way to find peace.